Hello, this is Susan Smith Nash, and you're listening to the Fringe Journal. Today we're going to be listening to Chapter 2 of Todos Santos. Chapter 2, The Panhandle Sky. The highway stretched before Wisteria like a gray ribbon thrown across the vastness of the Texas Panhandle, disappearing into a horizon that seemed to exist in another dimension entirely. Interstate 40 cut through the landscape, so flat and endless that it challenged the human brain's ability to process scale, mile after mile of grassland punctuated by the occasional pump jacks, their mechanical heads nodding like great metal birds drinking from the earth's hidden reserves. Wisteria had left Norman before dawn, her jeep loaded with a single duffel bag and a leather portfolio containing her credentials, passport, and a cashier's check from VitaNuova Incorporated for more money than she'd made in the past 2 years combined. The check had arrived by courier within hours of her acceptance call, along with detailed travel arrangements and a brief dossier on Dr. Holdsby Asher that read like a military record with half the pages redacted. Now, 3 hours into the drive, the Oklahoma hills had given way to the geological democracy of the high plains, a landscape that had once been seafloor, then grassland, then dust bowl, then grassland again. The earth here held memory in its sedimentary layers, ancient oceans, vast subtropical swamps, extensive deserts laying down red beds, and then, in the time between the last ice ages and now, buffalo herds, failed wheat farms, and the dreams of people who tried to make something permanent in a place that specialized in impermanence. Wisteria pulled off at a truck stop outside Amarillo, her back stiff from the drive, her mind churning with questions she had been trying to avoid. The facility sprawled again across several acres, diesel pumps, a convenience store, a restaurant that promised world's best chicken fried steak, and a parking lot filled with 18-wheelers whose drivers were catching sleep in their cabins before the next leg of their journeys. The bathroom mirror showed her what the early morning and long drive had accomplished. Blonde hair escaping from its ponytail, blue eyes that carried more shadow than usual, the kind of pallor that came from too little sleep and too much caffeine. She splashed cold water on her face and tried to recognize the woman staring back at her. When she had become someone who would accept money when had she become someone who would accept money to investigate impossible claims? When had grief made her desperate enough to chase fairy tales across state lines? The answer, she knew, was exactly 18 months, 2 weeks, and 3 days ago. "Ma'am, you okay?" Wisteria turned to find a woman in her 60s, watching. She wore a Desert Storm veteran cap, a denim jacket covered in military patches. Her face had the weathered quality of someone who'd spent years outdoors. Her eyes held the particular alertness Wisteria recognized in her veteran clients. "I'm fine," Wisteria said, then amended, "I'm tired. Long drive." "Where are you headed?" "Mexico, Baja California." The woman raised an eyebrow. "That's a hell of a drive. You got family down there?" Wisteria hesitated. How to explain that she was chasing the possibility of resurrection, that a defense contractor had offered her enough money to investigate a man who claimed he could bring back the dead. "Work," she said finally. "What kind of work takes a woman like you to Mexico?" Well, the question wasn't hostile, just curious. Wisteria sensed the protective instinct of someone who had seen too many people make dangerous choices. "I would have hoped it was a nice, relaxing, or exhausting vacation with family." "I'm a psychologist, trauma specialist." "Oh." The woman nodded as though that explained everything. "Military?" Some of my clients are veterans, yes. Lost someone over there? The question hit Wisteria like a physical blow. She gripped the edge of the sink, knuckles white against the porcelain. I'm sorry, the woman said immediately. That was out of line. I can tell. You got that look. What look? The look of someone who's still fighting a war that ended for everybody else. Wisteria studied the woman's face in the mirror. You lost someone too. My husband, Marine, second tour in Afghanistan. The woman's voice remained steady, but her hands trembled slightly as she adjusted her cap. IED outside Kandahar. 3 years ago, last month. They stood in silence for a moment, two women in a truck stop bathroom sharing the particular grief of those left behind by war. Wisteria thought of the support groups she'd facilitated, the careful language of healing and acceptance she learned to deploy like verbal medication. But standing here, she found herself wordless. The thing is, the woman continued, you reach a point where you do anything to have them back, even for 5 minutes, even if it made making a deal with the devil himself. Wisteria's phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. Flight leaves at 6 p.m. tomorrow evening. Meeting ahead of that. We'll send details. HW. I have to go. Be careful down there, honey. Mexico is not what it used to be, especially for Americans traveling alone. Wisteria nodded and headed for the door, then turned back. What was your husband's name? Marcos Williams. He wanted to be a teacher when he got back. History. I'm sorry for your loss. I'm sorry for yours too, honey. And whatever you're chasing down there, just remember that some doors, once you open them, well, you can't close them again. Wisteria left the truck stop with the woman's words echoing in her mind. She drove through Shamrock as the sun reached its zenith, a small town shimmering in the heat waves that made Dairy Queen she planned to visit shimmer a bit. The Texas Panhandle stretched endlessly around her, a landscape so vast it made human concerns seem microscopic, yet somehow managed to amplify the weight of individual loss. She stopped for gas at a station where tumbleweeds had collected against the fence like nature's version of chain-link snow. As she filled her tank, Wisteria watched a red-tailed hawk circle overhead, riding thermals in slow, mesmerizing spirals. The bird moved with a kind of patience that came from understanding that persistence, not speed, was a key to survival in a harsh country. Her phone rang. Dr. Chen, her therapist, to keep herself grounded. Wisteria continued to see a therapist once a month, at minimum. Wisteria, I got your message. Are you sure about this trip? I'm already in Texas. Well, that's not what I asked. Wisteria leaned against her Jeep, watching traffic flow past on the interstate. I have to do this, Linda. I can't explain why, but I have to. That sounds like magical thinking. You know that, right? The idea that this man in Mexico might have some way to... I know how it sounds. Do you? Because it sounds like a woman in the acute phase of grief making decisions that could put her in danger. Wisteria closed her eyes. Dr. Chen was right, of course. Everything about this trip violated the principles of healthy grief processing. She was chasing an impossible hope, funded by people whose motives she barely understood, toward a destination that might not offer anything but further loss. What if that's not possible? Wisteria asked quietly. Wisteria? What if there's something we don't understand about death? About the line between life and whatever comes after? What if science is just finally catching up to what people have always hoped was true? The silence stretched between them across hundreds of miles. I can't stop you, Dr. Chen said finally, but I want you to promise me something. If this starts to feel dangerous, and I mean any kind of danger, physical or psychological, you'll come home. I promise. And, Wisteria, keep writing in your journal, poetry, whatever. Keep processing what you experience. Don't let yourself get lost in whatever you're going through. After hanging up, Wisteria sat in her Jeep for a long moment, engine running, air conditioning fighting against the Texas heat. Around her, the Panhandle continued its ancient routine, wind moving across grass, clouds casting shadows that raced across the plains, the steady rhythm of a landscape that had witnessed countless human dramas and remained essentially unchanged. She thought of her last poem, written the night before she had accepted VitaNuova's offer. The dead have no country, but the living build borders around their absence, checkpoint grief, where memory must show its papers to pass. She read the lines again, her face reddened a bit. It's a dumb idea for a poem. Really dumb. Too tidy. The Amarillo airport was still far away. Wisteria pulled back onto the interstate, her Jeep a small speck moving across the immensity of the high plains. In her rearview mirror, the truck stopped, dwindled to a distant cluster of lights, and she wondered if she'd ever see this landscape again, or if she'd ever be the woman who was seeing it now. If she'd ever again be the woman who was seeing it now. The radio played country music that spoke of heartbreak and redemption, of people making bad choices for good reasons. Wisteria changed channels to a political commentator who energized himself through outrage and pressed harder on the accelerator, chasing the horizon toward whatever waited for her in the desert by the sea. End of chapter 2, Todos Santos. You're listening to the Fringe Journal, and this is Susan Smith Nash.